get at the kind of lack of predictability and spontaneity you spoke of in notated form?
Are you talking about in like musicological approaches to it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So that's a really great question, and it's a really big challenge for music studies in general. And so there are a few ways that people have gone have approached that issue. So personally, I like to take either a comparative or an ethnographic approach. So in what Junie Morrison was talking about here, when he was talking about in the arrangement of pain, where he would explicitly state like, hey, this was an improvisational activity. Like I set up the hook, I called out players' names, and then they did their own thing. So I think that's a really useful really useful way. If you don't have access to that, if you can't talk to musicians or they haven't spoken about it in any sort of public forum, another way that music scholars go about approaching it is to do a sort of comparative study. Prince's music is actually a really good example of this. When he performs live, he performs with a band, or when he performs live, he performs with a band. Often, when he made his own records, he was playing all of the parts and recording all of the parts. So noticing what either the rhythmic changes or the harmonic changes or the integration of sort of different grooves, like he had a Brazilian piano player for a while, so there were a lot of Latin grooves that showed up in his live performances. That kind of comparative approach, I think, is also useful for thinking about improvisation. Some music scholars sort of don't go for notation at all. We'll talk about sort of the cultural impact of sort of improvisation as an activity or as a form of knowledge production. Cool, that's a great question. Yeah?
Yeah, it's found on Junie and I were friends. We discovered that Junie and I were the only two people who had an RMI piano. And it was a piano that had hops chord, and that actual piano was used in pain, RMI. So mine is over in the Funk Center. I know, hey, this is the Funk Center, but he and I were only two people in Dayton that had the RMI piano. I think they were first two off the assembly line. Yeah.
Cool, it's a great piece of funk history. It's a good thing you donated it to the Funk Center.
It had a funky sound to it.
Yes?
And also, too, the drum set of Greg Webster, you did Pain and Funky Murder is in the Funk Center there on display, clear drum set where he played it. And also, Greg is still living. He's one of the original Iowa players still living, first generation Iowa players. Also, too, he is a great person. He loves to talk to people. And he does have a book in later years for Iowa players. Buy that on Amazon.
Great.
Yeah. I have maybe a broader question in terms of even though the folk music declined, in what ways, based on your research, do you think contemporary music or aspects of contemporary music is standing on the shoulders of folk music?
Wow, yeah, that is a great question. So a lot of what the panel was talking about earlier today, I think Bruno Mars was mentioned as one of the younger musicians who's really sort of drawing on funk history. Janelle Monáe is certainly another individual who is doing that. The person that I keep coming back to, I'm originally from North Dakota, and so we all sort of, those of us who are really invested in Black pop music sort of gravitate towards Minneapolis and really sort of latch on to Prince's music. And so I think one of the things that Prince was able to do really well, and that really sort of impacted a lot of popular music from the 80s to today, was really sort of integrate those really intricate sort of interlocking funk rhythms that he had in his music, and sort of overlaid some of the sort of like new age sounds from, new wave sounds from the guitar and the piano lines. So I think that sort of that funk foundation that you see in some of those bands from the 80s, and really some of the younger artists incorporating those and really sort of being mentored by those musicians in much the same way that the Ohio players sort of stayed here in Dayton and mentored those musicians as well. really sort of building on those foundations.
That's a great question, because Prince is someone that would collaborate with musicians often, but he also recorded as an individual. He would play, bass guitar and other instruments. Do you feel like the music fundamentally changes when it is a collaborative experience as opposed to just an individual working alone?
When you say fundamentally changes, I mean, so in one hand I would say yes, because it's a collaborative process, and so if you're recording by yourself, you can either have sort of the whole song sort of mapped out in your head, or you can go back and you can continually listen to the parts of the track that you've laid down. Whereas if it's more of a collaborative process, particularly during live performance, you sort of have to respond in the moment to the kinds of musical statements that are made. Yes.
Is your information available to find anywhere online, like a presentation?
I can certainly make it available to you if you would like. If you're talking, like, there are certain sections of it that are available. Scott Brown's work is, you can find it. Junie Morrison has there's a really great website devoted to Junie Morrison where you can find a lot of his interviews. So yeah, or if you want to read the paper, come and talk to me.
We also
I'll
expect to
send you
publish
this.
the proceedings from the symposium. We're recording everything.
Oh, cool. That works as well.
Yeah, that will be for a while.
Yes.
I was so glad to see you mention Dr. Portia Mossby, some of her work. Are you familiar also with Dr. Robert Pierce Thompson work from Yale in terms of passion and spirit and connection for improvisation and understanding?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dr. Ferris Thompson's work is really sort of fundamental. I sort of came to it through Ricky Vincent's book. He talks about Thompson's text as well, sort of talking about the sort of African and Afro-diasporic musical features that are really fundamental to sort of the funk ethos.
One last question, anybody? Or comment? Let's give Matthew a